Composition in art is the ability to harmonize everything into a single cohesive media. From every stroke, every color, sound, etc. It is a hard task, given how deep art can be. In video games, that ranges from gameplay, sound, level, art design, all the way to presentation, writing, and acting. So it's not crazy to say that Doom 2016 is one of the most well-composed pieces of media ever conceived. It wasn't just a reboot, it was a masterpiece being reintroduced to the masses. Something so brutal, industrial, and filthy that, crazily enough, was so well polished. The Slayer wasn't a superhero or mythological. He was just scary. Enemies were hellish and unique, and not cartoony or extremely generic. Doom 2016 was indeed so unique that both entries that followed it simply couldn't even replicate the basics of what made it so special. But this is not a hate piece toward Eternal or Dark Ages, even if I don't like them at all. This is merely a statement, a critique on aimless intention and devs not understanding the potential they threw away. And before we dive in, let's get one thing straight. This is not an easy topic to deconstruct. Simply because, as I always say, intention precedes design. Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton didn't want to make Doom 2016 2.0. They wanted each entry to be their own thing, even comparing 2016 as a indie horror vibe and Eternal as a summer blockbuster version of that same idea. So with that said, they had one thing on mind. They wanted to expand, make it bigger, make it grander, make the power fantasy feel earned and epic. Bigger demons, more scale, more spectacle, more realms, more tools for this layer. They were scared of the games feeling too similar. But here's the thing though. That fear made them forget why 2016 was so iconic in the first place. They jumped over the line from natural evolution into something that lost the soul that made 2016 a lightning in the bottle. And that's because Doom 2016 isn't just well designed, it's a masterpiece of ambience and level design. The entire game is built around darkness, not cheap jumpscare darkness, but unsettling, oppressive darkness that abuses of shadows, tight corridors, and dramatic contrast with color schemes to guide you. Whether you're going through UAC facility or navigating the disturbing hellish insides or even broad wastelands of hell itself, the lightning does the heavy lifting. All the bloody hallways, the moments you catch glimpses of Mars wastelands or the monochromatic bright contrast of fire, and even places of pure darkness with few navigating tools, the ambience never loses its eeriness. The claustrophobic, industrial, filthy like corporate megastructure slowly being eaten alive by deconstruction carries the whole atmosphere, and it was never bested in that regard. All this because 2016 carries the horror DNA of Doom 3 with that anxiety-inducing ambience. There is tension and discomfort. Hell isn't just another faction throwing war, it's disturbing, actually leaving trails of gore and corruption everywhere. And that's why the magic works so well. You are the fucking Doomslayer. Hell doesn't scare you, you scare it. You are a walking arsenal tearing through this nightmare, and the level design knows it. The controlled chaos works because the environment holds the dread just long enough. You get these moments of near silence, just distant screams, synthwave noises, and some of the movement. All this builds anxiety, even if a little bit. And when you are getting near a gore nest or a scripted fight, the soundtrack slowly creeps in. And that is why when the music explodes in the fights, they become so memorable. They prepared you for that moment. It's a roller coaster of silence, dread, and release. But it's so condensed that it never becomes exhausting. However, when you flip to Eternal and the Dark Ages, all that entire philosophy is gone. Everything is bright as shit. You cut all that roller coaster build up for clean epicness. There is no eeriness, oppression, or anxiety. There is only spectacle. Constant spectacle, one after another. The levels feel like they could be ripped from a discount power metal album cover or a bootleg Warhammer 40k battlefield. There are constant battle arenas with constant scale. Even the core concept of hell felt more like a faction in a big mythological war you're supposed to win as the ultimate survivor. Demons aren't a grounded corruption anymore. They're set dressing for a blatant power fantasy. And this harms the game's progression a lot. Traveling from point A to point B in 2016 was special due to the build-up. But when the navigation gets open with giant arenas and broad corridors, you feel like there's not even a change of pace. There's no breathing room to slow down and try to make the player feel anything else. And because everything is already dialed to epic, every combat, every visual, every new gameplay addition, every new level from the inside to outside, all that grandiosity stales. Because when everything is special, nothing is special. And calling back to their desire to make everything fresh and avoiding a Doom 2016 2.0, I think that idea is fair and respectable, but the cost of that was a complete waste of one of the most unique, angst-filled industrial tension-made games in modern age. I talked extensively in my Silent Hill F video about this, how Silent Hill's trademark wasn't even the name Silent Hill, but what the place was. And it applies to the same regard as here. The sequels treat everything as power fantasy first, and when you play the trilogy back to back, the difference isn't a small fall off, it's an abyss. In my perspective, I feel like modern devs fear anything that is aesthetically uncomfortable. 2016 knew exactly that it was fucked up, aggressive, dark, and strangely enough, kind of empowering. I still remember when Carrion got released and everyone was saying, "Oh my god, finally a game where I can play the monster." And I still remember always looking confused. Doom is right there. You feel more like the monster than the demons themselves. And speaking of the demons, most people downplay the importance of enemy design. If the threat you're supposed to go against isn't interesting, well thought, or memorable, you simply won't have as much fun. And the demons in Doom are iconic. You may not know their names, but if you came across the franchise, you definitely remember how they look. So, given their importance, I don't think it's crazy to say that they got worse with time. What was once satanic and creepy became borderline cartoony in Eternal in a desperate attempt of nostalgia bait, only to then shift that for the most boring and bland safe demons of the franchise. Grit is a word I love to throw around when talking about the massive dip in quality games are going through. You will rarely see anything fucked up in media that doesn't label itself as straight up horror, but the decision to inherit the ghoulish nature of the enemies from Doom 3 in 2016 and giving them a worthy redesign was beyond cool. As I said before, having the Slayer a walking menace was a decision that made the reboot so well received. They are a perfect match in environmental storytelling, so when enemies go softer in their design, contrary to the protagonist, you not only downgrade the threat, but also the Slayer himself. So for comparisons, let's take my favorite enemy, the Revenant. Revenants are gnarly. That's the best way to describe them. You can see organs poking out. They are putrid and decayed. They feel like the machinery is the only thing keeping them together. They have those lifeless eyes and only the faintest resemblance of what could have been once a human, but a long time ago. Now you see the one in Eternal and immediately you can tell how much the direction changed in personality. Are they closer to the OG in the 90s? Absolutely. Are they less scary compared to 2016? Absolutely. They have no repulsive or sinister vibes. They are shallow, barely anything impactful. They sure look arcade-ish, as it was intended for the new vision, but the word scary wouldn't even cross my mind. And then, in the Dark Ages, holy fuck, they became a generic Grim Reaper. All the spookiness switched to the most forgettable visual possible. I made a video on edgy gaming and this falls like a glove. They are trying so hard to make an edgy gothic enemy design that they lost all the sauce that the original design was made to have. It's not purely the visual, it's really the vibe it gives. Sure, they are supposed to be medieval, they are intended to have that old-timer aesthetic. But all I can see here is a discarded D&D threat that nobody would ever use. Nowhere near the levels of rememberability of the previous entry. It is so weird to say this, but the more time has passed, the less raw and demonic things became. Which is the whole purpose of Doom, it's killing demons. Cacodemons went from the most inhuman, terrifying and fiendish creatures to a random Cthulhu-like monster. It's the same as what happened with Demon Souls. All that cool early direction turned down to a mere dated concept design. And listen, I know that hell is located on Mars, but fuck's sake, why turn literal Satan, the Baron of Hell, one of the easiest demons, into an alien? I know this shit takes place in another planet, but come on now, this is Doom, not Gears of War. Where is the artistic integrity? And I could chimp out at every single design, all the safe vibe of Eternal to the 180 that Dark Ages did. But you get the point. The composition they chose fit what the games became. I'm not saying they stand out in a bad way from the rest. They fit the level designs they live in. However, they are not even close to the quality of 2016. Also, I ain't someone knowledgeable on modeling. Someone could explain this better than I ever could, but 2016 looks more solid than the other two. They have stronger details and overall readability, and I think the first composition is better not because of technology per se, but because they also are more cohesive. But I'm not the guy to say this, because I know jack shit on this field. But if there's one thing I can actually critique, is the Slayer himself. Over-explanation is the name of the problem. Both the Slayer and the lore are given too much unnecessary importance. The number one rule of horror that can extend to all media, as everyone knows, is that mystery is key. The more you know about anything, the less scary or interesting it gets. So, when we are introduced to Doomguy, he is a mystery. He was sealed away, demons fear him. He was labeled as dangerous and possibly unstoppable, a weapon we cannot control. That's why he bears no name, only a title. He doesn't feel like a man, and that's why he is the menace he is. And you know how we break that legend? It's quite easy. We glaze him. Out of nowhere, he is part of an elite warrior race. He is a glorified man who fought in ancient wars. He was enhanced by Mykers, who are basically angels that gave him near immortality and the strength to cleanse hell alone. The simple concept of a man too angry to die is now a man literally overpowered by deities. The entire cosmic balance revolves around this guy, and it is, as I said, so unnecessary. This Slayer was never compelling because he was the most important being in the universe. He was compelling because he didn't need to be. He was almost a machine with one purpose. And that transition also broke down his coldness. We still cannot tell what his personality is, but they are damn sure trying to humanize him. And there's no greater comparison than small scenes. It feels like they made him heroic, and Doomguy himself also bought into that idea. One of my favorite things from the first entry is how cold he is with everything. That is part of his DNA as a character. But slowly they started doing things that don't feel like him. When we see how he reacts to the chainsaw, a gameplay weapon treated as an insta-kill, he picks it up, checks it out, and just goes on his way with it. And that same treatment is given to any weapon, even the BFG. Everything is just a tool for the Doomguy. He sees it all as simple ways to rip and tear. But when we check Eternal and the Crucible, all the relevancy it has in the lore doesn't matter. It's merely a key, a means to an end for the Slayer. So why does he pose with it? Same with the stupid demon he rides as a weapon in Dark Ages. They almost show sympathy through him in that beast's death, something that would never be part of his character. If you think these are just small scenes and don't matter, let's say we take someone like Superman, the epitome of goodness and kindness. Someone who is more than willing to sacrifice his own life for others without a second thought. Now take that same character and just for a moment, he decides to flip someone off. Just a quick middle finger. Would that be in character? No, it wouldn't. All this combined with the fucking lore. Oh my god, why did they turn Doom into a story-driven game? The environmental storytelling was so good before, only knowing about the atrocities through the setting. All the audio logs spoken in such an eerie tone. It was smart, controlled lore. And the reason why it's so consistent, it's because people play Doom for the gameplay, the vibe, and its unapologetic nature. No one gives a shit about these characters, nor will they remember them. They did this universe so dirty by turning it into a Marvel Cinematic Universe ripoff. Not necessarily the cringy dialogue itself, but the cinematics and presentation of heroes and villains. The forced epicness of the final encounters and so on. And man, on the subject of epicness, I think it's time to address the most overlooked topic of discussion: the bloody OST. Everyone loves Doom's OST. It is yet another iconic thing, but the soundtrack of Doom Eternal stands as a fascinating case study in how exceptional musical composition can be undermined, not by lack of creativity, but on its mixing. It's not that the music itself is flawed. The tracks were largely created by Mick Gordon. They are just as complex as the previous one. The issue is in how it was released. To understand this nerd shit, one must first grasp what mixing is. And the most brain-dead way to explain is to balance all individual elements of a track so that each one shines. From guitars, drums, synths, effects, etc. It's less about what's being played and more about what's being heard. Let me try to explain. Imagine you are in a kitchen, a dish with high-quality ingredients such as a perfectly cooked meat, carefully selected spices, and good textures. Mixing is the plating and seasoning. Deciding how much of everything goes on the plate is what separates something good to something that will burn into your memory. And if you're not careful, you'll enter how to basic levels of presentation. And that is what kind of happened to Doom Eternal. A lot of its tracks feel as though they are constantly at maximum intensity, leaving no room for contrast. And that's a result of brick walling, also known as excessive compression. The decision to not balance the low and the loud sounds of a track, giving it a less dynamic range. That's why the tracks are so repetitive and not as impactful. There's also a serious case of muddiness. There are guitars, bass, and synth, which often occupy similar sonic spaces. Good mixing allows distinction from each other, something that does not happen in Eternal, where they feel blurred and cramped together. There's no room to hear each instrument, it all gets lost in the noise. Which then stumbles even more with the editing, because editing is also an issue. Some loops are very noticeable, some transitions are very abrupt, and there are times that they feel just out of sync. as well as certain tracks that feel better mixed than others. I simply cannot show them because that would be copyright, but here are some of them that I caught a certain dip in quality. So understand what I'm trying to say is that the inconsistency is there, and only some tracks feel closer to mixing approach. And listen, it's hard to outperform 2016, that was generational, and I understand that many simply wouldn't care. Hell, you might even not care. But music is tied to emotion. And one of the core reasons why most moments in Eternal don't hit as hard is because of all what I said. And don't even get me started in the Dark Ages. That is like hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby. And if you need even more proof of Doom's impactful OST and how it changed everything, I highly recommend Nick Nocturnal's video on this. He is a musician and he could explain in greater detail why that was a banger. Better than I ever could. So, given how level design, art, writing, and even OST changed for the worst, all I am left with is to question these changes. Even if they didn't want a Doom 2016 2.0, I'd reckon it would have been better than Doom 2016 0.5. I know I am being harsh and making games is hard, but when you prove you can cook peak, the standards will get higher. Even if you wanted to amp and change the game with the following titles, that wasn't it. One feels like a disrespect to what came before, and the other doesn't even feel like it's from the same franchise. And mind you, I didn't even dive on the terrible lore extension nor the gameplay changes that much. That's a whole other beast that could occupy yet another 10 to 20 minutes. With me bitching about the arcade stuff and the decision to turn the game into a parry, turret and mech simulation with no impact on none of them. And I understand the desire and demand to go bigger and bring some sort of innovation to what was built. That is called progression, but that came to the extent of not only level design, but also artistic identity. All the soul the game used to have with the dark industrialism made it feel like a once-in-a-lifetime game. It was solid proof that they could keep the darkness of 3 and up its level with brutal action. And guess what? All that was lost in search of appealing to everyone. The reason why Eternal did so well in sales was because of the impact of 2016. And the reason why Dark Ages wasn't a hit was because of Eternal's shift. And if a Doom 4 ever comes out, they'll have to regain the audience's trust again. Let it be known, more times than not. Less is more. Complexity can lead to memorability, but simplicity will always win hearts. Thanks for watching.